Take your mind into the wonderful world of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual wellness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kinetic Hour. Conversations with you and guests with your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Kinetic Hour. I am your host, Kenan Wesley Mason. Welcome one, welcome all, and happy belated New Year to all of you. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening to the Kinetic Hour. It is a new year, which means new happenings and new things happening in the world. As usual, we are simulcasting live on Facebook, simulcasting live on Instagram, and simulcasting live on LinkedIn. So welcome to all three platforms. And I want to welcome everyone on Rumble, as this will be the first live show. This will be the first show that will be on Rumble, because before the year ended, I mentioned that I would be posting up my podcast shows on Rumble as well, because of all the censorship that occurs through YouTube. And so welcome to everyone on Rumble, and I'm happy to be a part of that platform as well. Go to both channels and subscribe. Go to YouTube and go to Rumble and subscribe. Tell everyone that you know to subscribe. Tell everyone that you know to have them subscribe, and make comments regarding the comments. And we're going to make this a great year for the Kinetic Hour, as I'm always happy to do these shows. And thank you to all the new subscribers on YouTube, all the new subscribers that'll be subscribing on Rumble. Welcome. And first, before I get to all the happenings, because I have a list right here of all the things that I want to pack into the next 60 minutes or so. First, to all the new subscribers, it is a new year, and I just want to give a briefing on who I am, especially to the Rumble viewers. Once again, like I said, my name is Kenan Wesley Mason. I've been doing this show here officially for since November of 2022, during the tail end of the pandemic, and I've been doing this show ever since. And as it kind of connects with what I did with my mother on her show, Aim to Purpose, the radio show, which I was the co-host, and we had guests from all over the world. And so this show continues where that show left off. We did that show from 2014 to late 2016. And all topics were on the table, or most topics at least were on the table. So with this show, as you go more and more into watching this particular broadcast, you'll notice that virtually all topics are on the table. For those of you that have watched me, you know that I go into virtually any and all subjects. We just got finished with, well, we're almost done with political season. So I've done a lot of shows on politics. You'll know that I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I kind of stay as neutral as possible for varying reasons. The main reason is that both parties, for those that live here in America, both political parties, as I always say, are guilty as charged for creating the chaos that we have now, which I'll go more into later on the show. I'm also into health matters as well, being that, as you can see with my name, I have a title there, holistic practitioner of psychology, because I'm board certified as a holistic psychology practitioner, have been so since 2011. Also had varying certifications in personal fitness training and nutrition and wellness counseling. So my credentials are pretty wide. Certified as a third degree Reiki master practitioner as well. So I go deep diving into health matters as well, which is great because, again, the political guard is going to change actually within less than a week now. Less than a week. We get a new president. And so you'll hear me talking about politics. You'll hear me talking about health matters. You'll hear me talking about economic matters. You'll hear me talking about social matters. And I'll put up, for those that are on Rumble, I'll put up some clips of previous shows that I've done on other matters that are going on in the world, matters that you might not hear in the mainstream media, which you'll hear me talking about them as well. So with this show here, the Kinetic Hour, you'll hear a variety of topics. You'll hear a variety of topics because my range is pretty wide when it comes to topics on the table. I've had guests on the show as well. I haven't had any guests recently since probably the spring or summer of last year. But this year, as I mentioned on a few previous shows, that I will be having more guests and new guests on the show to grace the stage of the Kinetic Hour. So I'm looking forward to that. The first thing that I want to talk about, I got so much stuff here, and I'll be as brief as I can with all of them. This time last year, when I did my beginning of the year show, I mentioned how I'm going to do more reading, and I did just that. So I just want to highlight some of the varying books that I read throughout the last 365 days. And these are all great, and I'm going to hold them all up. I've referenced a few books on this show, depending on what the topic of discussion is. And I'll reference even more books that you may or may not have heard of before. And another thing you'll notice is that, you know, outside of the mainstream media, or being different from the mainstream media, you'll see that I bring topics to the table that you probably won't see for varying reasons. I've had YouTube, I've had shows banned or censored on YouTube, which is, again, the main reason why I chose to go to Rumble as well. So you'll see me referencing a lot of books that are in conjunction with the topic at hand. But I did read a lot of books this year, and I'm going to read even more or equal amount of books This first one here is a really short read. Some of you may have heard it before, some of you may not. But it's a book called It Works. It's a book called It Works. The famous little red book that makes your dreams come true. And I'll just hold it up right here so everyone can see. And it's a very short book, as you can see. It's almost like a pamphlet. It'll take about maybe 10 or 15 minutes to read. And I like to read it over and over again as it kind of digs deeper into the neurology of my brain. So I like reading this book here. I've read it several times, and I read it again this past year. It's great, and it has some great things that we all can apply to life. This next one here, I've read a couple of times. It's a book called Hung by the Tongue. It's a book called Hung by the Tongue by Francis Martin. It's a great book for those that want some great references of the words that you speak matter. The words that you speak matter. And this book references a lot of biblical verses. Biblical verses. I'm not the big religious person, but this is a great book here. I'm not a Christian. I'm not Catholic. I'm not Muslim. Those are the three great religions of the world. And no disrespect to any of them, but I don't belong to any of those religions. I take more of a, quote, spiritual approach to life versus a religious approach to life. Because at the end of the day, all of them lead to the same place. So this book here, Hung by the Tongue, it's a great book. You should read it. The next book here, this book here is great because it goes into more what we call African text, or African spiritual text, or African spiritual orders. For anyone that's into African history or African culture, you may have heard of the 42 laws of Ma'at. And so this book here, it's by Latanya Page Balcom. Right here, it's called Ma'at 42 plus God. Ma'at 42 plus God. And it's a great read. It's a short read, and it's an easy read too, on some basic life principles from a spiritual, or going deeper, a Kemetic, by way of what we call Kemet, which now we call Egypt. We call Egypt, but the original name of Egypt is Kemet. That's the original name before it was given the title Egypt through Europeanization. But this is a great book, Ma'at 42 plus God. It's a great read, and it's an easy read. This book here, I've referenced a few times, and I've also had her on the show as a guest. Actually, I've interviewed her a couple of times, and she's great. This book here is called So You've Been Diagnosed with Cancer, and Now You're in a Panic Handbook. I love the title. An overview of options by Dr. Layla Ali, pharmacy doctor, and she's great. This is an easy read too, going into how all of us can heal ourselves of cancer. You know, I'm a health person. You know, I love talking about health matters. And cancer, for those that live here in America, we all know that cancer is a sensitive topic for a lot of people, because of all the information that we've been given regarding cancer for over 100 years, and more people are developing cancer, more people are still using the standard protocols of chemotherapy and radiation, or surgical procedures. So this book here gives you some alternative options, so you don't have to go through all of the standard procedures that go along with a cancer diagnosis. And I've seen the results of cancer diagnoses and cancer protocols, the results of what they do to the body firsthand, because I've talked about my brother having cancer on numerous occasions on this show and on Aim to Purpose, the radio show. And so this book here goes into some references on how all of us can make ourselves well without the use of the standard protocols of America that have been around for 100 years, but people are still being gravely harmed by these standard procedures. So check that book out. This next book, many of you may have, and many of you may have seen the movie as well. The movie is based on the book, and the book is based on the movie. And it's a movie that came out in 2006. 2006. So many of you have seen the document. It's a documentary movie. So I'll hold it up. It's a book by Rhonda Byrne. It's called The Secret. It's called The Secret. And many of you may have read the book. Many of you may have seen the documentary and the movie. It's a great book. It's a great book. It's a lot of great things in here about what we call the law of attraction. The law of attraction. Many people have scoffed at the idea of certain laws that make up this cosmic universe. And The Secret is a great book on some basics on certain laws that can be applied, or certain things that we can do to activate the law. Certain things that we can do to activate the law. And I haven't really gone deep diving into that topic, the law of attraction, the laws of synchronicity, and the laws of compensation. That's what Ralph Waldo Emerson used to call it, the law of compensation. But it's a great book, and it's an easy read based on the movie. So I recommend that and the documentary as well. This next book here is a short book about motivation and initiative, taking initiative. It's a book by Peter Kine. It's called The Go-Getter. It's called The Go-Getter. It's a book about just that. It's a book about just that. It's a fictional book about a gentleman that did whatever it took to succeed in the task that was given to him by his bosses. I think that's a book that was written back in the 1930s, if I'm not mistaken, 1930s, 1940s. Old school books. And they all still make their points today. That's great. For all of you new viewers, for the new Rumble viewers, you'll see me drinking my wine on occasion during these shows. I love my wine. This right here is pomegranate wine. And I've been drinking this wine now for probably close to 15 years now, from a company called Tree of Life. Tree of Life. Pomegranate wine. And it's great. This next book here is another old school book. It was written back in the 50s, the early 50s, from an author that you may have heard before. He was a minister in New York, and he he became world renowned. His name is Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And this book right here is called The Power of Positive Thinking. The Power of Positive Thinking. What is it about? Just that, the power of positive thinking. Having more optimism versus creating more pessimism or having pessimism. The Power of Positive Thinking. It's a great book with some great references. Um, I encourage you all to read it. The Power of Positive Thinking. Thinking by Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. I got two more here, and then I'll move on to some other things I have right here. This next book here is another old school book by Dale Carnegie. By Dale Carnegie. Many of you may have heard it. It's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's an old school book. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's a great book about having a positive mental attitude and how we all can have better communication skills, better social skills, better negotiation skills, better sales and persuasion skills, because all of us can improve with all of them. So I encourage you to check that book out as well. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And this last book here, this last book here is a book that I'm pretty sure all of you have heard as well. It's one of the many books. It's one of the many books by Napoleon Hill. And many of you may have read this book. It's a great book and it's an easy read. It's an all-star classic. It's called Think and Grow Rich. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Says at the top, over 15 million copies sold worldwide. I'm pretty sure. I mean, this version here was revised. This is a revised version, and at this point, that the copies may be double now. It may be 30 million copies worldwide. But Think and Grow Rich. It's a great book talking about how we can work smart versus working hard. Working smart versus working hard. And we can think our way into a better financial status if or when we apply what's in the book and also apply the power of positive thinking and also apply winning friends and influencing people. So Think and Grow Rich. Think and Grow Rich. And all of those books are great. All of those books are great, and I recommend every last one of them for all of you to check out and read from beginning to end. I mentioned that I'm in the health and wellness field. You know, every year I do a annual cleansing or detoxification. And so I'm in the middle of that right now. So all I've been ingesting predominantly, and I've taken breaks in between, but predominantly it's been juice and smoothies. Juice and smoothies. So I'm in the middle of that right now since we're in the middle of January. And I might do it for the rest of the month. I don't know. I might even go into February. The longest that I've done as far as detoxification or any type of cleanse or detox has been 40 days and 40 nights of juice and smoothies. Juice and smoothies, no solid food whatsoever. And so I'm in the middle of that right now, and you know, I feel great, and um and life is great, and things are getting better and better. as I move forward in life. um, oh gosh, there's so many things going on. Um, I'll start with this. On the entertainment front, because I do talk about entertainment topics as well. Uh, a few months back, we should all know this by now, that one Sean Combs was arrested, and he's been held in custody now for a few months now, for quite some time, and he's tried to get himself out of his wherever he is. We don't know where he's. I guess he's somewhere in New York, some jail house in New York. And he's tried to have bail hearings, and he's been denied, I think, 3 different times, as he's being held up for I think $50 million bail. So he's going to be locked up for quite a while until a court date has been announced. And on top of that, right before the year ended, another hip hop mogul, as they like to be called, hip hop moguls, another Sean by the name of Sean Carter. His name is starting to circulate more and more and more and more. And so is his wife. His wife, we all know his wife, Miss Beehive or Bayhive, Beyonce Knowles Carter. I guess she still goes by Carter. She hasn't used the name in a while. But his name has been circulating for a lot of the same accusations that Sean Carter was arrested for. And so what comes of that, as the days and weeks and months go by, things just may cave in on his and her empire. You know, Beyonce just did a sequel to The Lion King called Mufasa, which didn't get the greatest reviews. I always wondered how she got selected to play the part of one of the female lion characters. You know, a country girl with a southern accent playing the role of an African lion. I mean, how does that work? I mean, she couldn't practice her having an African accent like a lot of actors do. You know, people like Idris Elba, who's from Europe. But when it comes to him playing American parts, that accent goes away. How come Beyonce is playing an African lion, but the African lion has a country bumpkin accent? How does that work? So Beyonce and Jay-Z, we'll see if their empire comes crashing down over the next few weeks and months. Another topic, because we have a new president coming in, this whole thing about this the bird flu, and I haven't really gone into it much. You know, several months ago, the first time we heard about a reoccurrence of the bird flu, because for those of you that remember, 15 years ago, almost 2 decades ago now, we had another, when actually it was when Obama was in office. Bird flu, and swine flu, right? And what was the other one? Oh, the West Nile virus. Remember that? So now there's a reoccurrence, as we see about bird flu. And we first heard about this from a cow farm in Texas. You know, we have all these happenings in Texas. the cows are developing bird flu. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, bird flu. And so now, uh, and then several months later, you had these monkeys that were released the day after the Donald was elected for president. These monkeys, it was like 43 monkeys that um, that mysteriously got out of these cages and started roaming free all over South Carolina, right? And this is from a facility that produces, right? And I know YouTube doesn't like when I use the term, so I'll bleep the word. Um, but this is what they manufacture at this facility where all these monkeys were released. Um, most of them, I think all of them were recovered. Most of them. Um, but again, it reminds me of the movie Outbreak, and I mentioned it before. The same monkeys that were mentioned in this report about them mysteriously getting out of these cages and roaming free in South Carolina. The same monkeys were um, were talked about and brought to the forefront in the movie Outbreak. And that movie is from what, 30 years ago? So my question is, when the Donald goes back into office, is this going to be his war again? You know, his war his last 4 years was the pandemic, coronavirus, or what they started to call COVID-19, which has been around for decades, but uh, because of media branding us with the notion, I mean, they literally tattooed our brains with coronavirus, COVID-19, the idea that everyone needs to take these inoculations, um, these mysterious inoculations that just happen to be readily available once he got into office. So, will it be another pandemic? Will there be another pandemic over the next 3 to 4 years during his presidency with all these cows and monkeys and all these animals that supposedly have the bird flu? So we'll see how that pans out. Um, and speaking of the Donald, and you'll hear me talk about the Donald quite a bit, or you'll hear me call him the Donald, because that's what he's been called for years, the Donald. You know, former President Jimmy Carter just passed away recently, and they just had his official funeral ceremony. And you know, when presidents pass away, all living presidents and vice presidents gather to pay their final respects. And we got to see something that many people in the general public don't get to see, because the last president to pass away was George Bush Sr. And then before that, I think it was either Gerald Ford or Richard Nixon, um, or no, Ronald Reagan. They've all passed away. But nonetheless, Jimmy Carter just had his final, he was finally laid to rest. And all the presidents, the living presidents, past presidents, and vice presidents were all in attendance, and their wives, excluding Barack Obama's wife, Michelle. She was not in attendance. But we got to see some things that we rarely get to see on camera. I mean, and I know people have already seen this, how the Donald and as he likes to call him, Barack Hussein Obama, because every time he references Obama, he always has to say his middle name, Hussein, because he knows psychologically it's a trigger word. He knows this. And so do all of his MAGA supporters and followers. They know this. So you notice that he and Obama were being real kind of chummy and just talking and laughing and giggling amongst each other, waiting for all the other respective presidents and vice presidents to come in. And they were just kind of cackling away, just laughing and giggling. Now, you would think because of all the all of the rallies that they've done and all of the talks that they've done about each other, reading their teleprompters, you would think that they hated each other's guts. But as former Governor Jesse Ventura always said, and he's been saying this now for like 20 years, politics is like professional wrestling. On camera, they act like bitter enemies and bitter rivals. But when the cameras go off, they're all friends. They're all friends. And when those cameras go off, they're all laughing at you. They're all laughing at you because you're falling for everything that they bring to the political table that you fall for every 4 years because they're all friends. And many, if not most of them, are all from the same echelon, from the same societies, the same groups. Many of you have never even heard of. Just a few episodes ago, I talked about the society called Skull and Bones, which is where most of your political figures come from. And so you see Barack Obama and Donald Trump just chopping it up, right? Another thing I noticed is that none of the wives wanted to shake the hand of Melania Trump. None of the wives, not even the Republican wives, not Mike Pence's wife, because Donald Trump threw him under the bus. And all of the MAGA supporters literally wanted to hang Mike Pence. You heard the chant, hang Mike Pence, because they literally wanted to hang him as if he were someone that looked like me. They wanted to hang Mike Pence. They wanted to hang Mike Pence. And so none of the wives shook the hand of Melania Trump. I thought that was real interesting. Not Mike Pence's wife, not even Laura Bush. Not even Laura Bush. And then you had Kamala Harris and her husband, her respective husband. And Kamala Harris and her husband, they looked disgusted at the fact that the Donald and Barack, or Barry, was just chopping it up like nothing ever happened, like, they never had any harsh words to say about each other. But again, this is politics. This is politics. This is how politics works. And the truth of the matter is that, they're all duping you, the voters, because every 4 years, when you sign your name on those voting ballots, this is what you're signing up for. No matter who goes into office, doesn't matter. Whether it's Barack Obama, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's Donald Trump, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of these happenings are discussed years in advance, and you don't even know it. Years in advance. How many MAGA supporters have heard of, once again, Skull and Bones and Freemasonry? Many of your presidents are Freemasons. How many MAGA supporters have heard of the Trilateral Commission? How many MAGA supporters have heard of the Council on Foreign Relations? How many MAGA supporters have heard of Halliburton? How many MAGA supporters have heard of the Carlyle Group? How many MAGA supporters have heard of the Bilderberg Group? Because MAGA supporters, they get real defensive on everything and want to argue with you about everything. When the truth of the matter is that even the ones that they support, they're being duped. They're duping you. And because politics is the ultimate mind game. It's the ultimate mind game. So it doesn't matter whether you vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. It doesn't matter. You're still being duped. Virtually. In most cases, you're being duped. So the Donald is going into office in less than a week. On the day that we acknowledge Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And I think his birthday is officially today, if I'm not mistaken. His birthday is today. But we're going to acknowledge his birthday on Monday, on the 20th, which is the day that the Donald goes into office or gets sworn into office. So we'll see what that turns into on that day. The last thing that I want to talk about, because I'm here in California, are these fires. I waited to talk about this because over the last week, there's been so many reports and misinformation. There's been a lot of misinformation told to the general public about these fires that just kind of mysteriously popped up in the most affluent of territories, right? The Palisades, the Pacific Palisades, and also in near Pasadena, Altadena. And these aren't official cities. These are communities within the city. Palisades being near Santa Monica and the Malibu area. And they're affluent areas where people that make 7 figures or more, this is where they live, respectively. And also Altadena as well, Pasadena, Altadena, which are several miles from each other, but these fires just mysteriously popped up out of nowhereville. There hasn't been any rain. It's been pretty dry, and the winds have been kicking up. So the fires have gotten out of control. They even showed some tornado fires or fire tornadoes in some of these regions. And many people have lost literally everything. Many people have lost literally everything they've ever possessed in their life, gone in smoke and ashes. Because the fire doesn't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat. And many people have taken this event and have politicized it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, many, will speak just here in California, many people are finger pointing as well. Finger pointing, playing the blame game, blaming Governor Gavin Newsom, blaming Mayor Karen Bass, who was out of the country when all this started. She was invited to Ghana to be at the inauguration of the new Ghana president. But she's here now, and many people are playing the blame game, blaming her, blaming Gavin Newsom. Um, one thing I've learned is that no matter how much you prepare for natural disasters, um, nothing's ever going to be perfect in um, nothing's ever going to be perfect when it comes to um, the help that's needed to extinguish these fires. You know, we've had to get help from Mexico, we've had to get help from Canada, and I'm grateful for it. But again, when you have these type of events, people are going to politicize them. And so we hear all the name calling. You know, they love calling governor of California Gavin Newscum. This is the name that the Donald has given them because um, maybe the Donald thinks he's a threat to his presidency. I don't know. But these are the words that have been kind of projected onto the MAGA supporters and just people in general that may have their gripes with the governor of California and the mayor of Los Angeles. Um, and a lot of misinformation about water shortages and, you know, all kind of stuff that we've heard. Misinformation. Um, one thing that I know is that there's going to be nature is going to have her say, no matter what party you belong to. Just like over in Florida, you know, you can't blame Ron DeSantis for all the hurricanes in Florida. You know, it's all his fault, and he's not allowing FEMA to do their job, or the FEMA people are only picking and choosing certain homes to help. Again, politicizing tragedy and politicizing nature taking her course. Um, you know, I mean, it's unfortunate. And then you hear all these celebrities complaining. You know, we've seen Mel Gibson, you know, Mr. Passion of the Christ, you know, complaining, and he's had enough problems with Hollywood, but we see him complaining. We've who else? Khloe Kardashian and all these people complaining, playing the blame game, pointing fingers versus helping the situation versus making the situation worse by doing this name calling. You know, I mean, speaking of fires, since we're, you know, name calling and blame gaming, what about the fires in Hawaii? Where's all the children that are missing from those fires in Hawaii? You know, those fires that Oprah Winfrey and Dwayne Johnson were begging the general public to come out of their pockets to help fund cleanup efforts. Well, Oprah and Dewey, where are the missing children? And that goes to the governor of Hawaii, Mr. Josh Green. Where's all the missing children that came up missing in Hawaii as a result of all those fires? We forgot about that, how quickly we forget, because we're too busy name calling during tragedy. So, where's all the children from Hawaii? Oh, gosh. It's sad, you know, but all we can talk about is blaming Gavin Newscum, you know, the Bruce Wayne of politics. Yeah, the Bruce Wayne of politics, Gavin Newsom. The only real gripe that I have with Gavin Newsom is during the pandemic, you know, just like other politicians, when it comes to health matters and the inoculation mandates. because unfortunately he has to follow the game as well when it comes to inoculations and how harmful they can be towards children and adults. Uh, but I don't think the people in California that are getting minimum wage working at fast food, I don't think they're calling him Gavin Newscum. And I think this only applies in California, the $20 minimum wage. So let's not point fingers. Let's help the situation. I mean, many people lost their homes, whether they're $1 million homes or not, it doesn't matter. People lost their homes, their possessions. We saw seniors being wheeled out of their senior living homes. These are unfortunate things, and people want to politicize them on both sides. And it's unfortunate. So we have to do better. We have to do better. Because no politician is perfect. No politician is perfect. Not Gavin Newsom, not Ron DeSantis. They're not perfect, and they're never going to be. So whether you like them or whether you don't like them, if you don't like them, vote them out of office. California had an opportunity to vote Gavin Newsom out of office. I mean, who were they going to get? Larry Elder? I mean, that's who ran against him. I mean, if we wanted to change so bad, why didn't they vote for him? So we have to contend with what we have and make the most of it until he's ready to either leave office or he gets voted out. Just like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was the governor of California. Some people loved him, some people didn't. There were fires here in California when he was in office. There were fires when Governor Jerry Brown was in office. I didn't see all the name calling and all this partisan stuff. But again, when we have the president-elect coming into office, and the Donald knows just how to push his supporters' buttons. He knows it because he knows it's a psychological game. And if you know the psychology of your supporters, you can say anything to pull the trigger. And we know that the Donald loves to use the most basic, elementary, third grade language because he knows that that's all it takes to trigger them into spitting venom, because that's what they like to do. Matter of fact, we've seen, and I'm going to wrap up here. We've seen these kangaroo clown hearings today and yesterday with Peter Hegseth getting grilled about being the next. Can't even think of the name now. It's going to be the head of the military, the entire military force. And, if you notice, some of you may not have noticed because you don't want to notice, but many of his Republican supporters, they were literally kind of not asking questions, but they were making statements, posing as questions, and kind of coaching him on how to answer. Peter Hegseth. I think today it was the Attorney General nominee, Pam Bondi. And then there's going to be others, Mark Rubio and a bunch of other ones. Tom Homan, possibly, who's supposed to be the border czar. I told you about how the prison stocks went up when Donald was elected president, because they're going to do these. They're going to make the attempt to do these mass deportations and arresting undocumented people, whether they've contributed to the country's expansion or not, whether they've been here for 40 or 50 years or not. So these kangaroo hearings, which happen every 4 years, they're happening right now. So we'll see if all of these nominations, if they'll get sworn in to their respective nominated positions. So a lot's happening in the world, and a lot's happening right here in America. Um, and I'll be here to talk about all of it. And again, bringing both sides of the spectrum and holding their feet to the fire, because mainstream media is not going to do it. They're just not. They're not in that business. They're in the business of making you making you believe that everything that they say is the truth. Mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, NBC, Newsmax, OAN, all of them. All of them. They're all controlled. And so me, little old me, with this little old podcast, here to bring issues that you're not going to see in the mainstream. So go to my YouTube channel and go to my Rumble channel and subscribe. Click notifications, click thumbs up, leave your comments. Tell everyone that you know to listen and check out the Kinetic Hour. And I'm so thankful for all of you for tuning in. There's so many podcasts that you can listen to. And so thank you for tuning into the Kinetic Hour. I'll be back for more, and just to be as entertaining as possible when it comes to these more serious issues, because no matter how serious these topics are, it's always great to bring some light, some light to all the darkness. So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.